What if the stars above you weren't decoration, but a verdict already written? In 650 BCE, the Assyrian king Esarhaddon received a written report from his royal astronomer warning him not to leave the palace. The moon had set in an unfavorable position. He stayed inside. That's not superstition, that's policy. Across Mesopotamia, Egypt, and China, the sky wasn't background, it was the law. The Babylonians called this celestial divination, and they systematized it over 1,500 years. Not astrology as metaphor, astrology as administration. The sky issued conditions, the scribes recorded them, and the king acted accordingly. The stars held binding authority. At the heart of the capital stood the Tower of Zorilith, 7 tiers, each calibrated to a different celestial band, from the wandering planets to the fixed stars at the outermost ring of the known sky. Inside, the Zorath priests worked with 3 instruments: the sighting stone, a polished obsidian lens ground to arcsecond precision; the shadow pool, a still mercury basin mirroring the zenith; and the orrery, a brass mechanical model of the 6 known wanderers. The Vaeltharion calendar held 412 days, divided not by months, but by conjunctions, moments when 2 or more wandering stars aligned within a single degree of arc. Conjunction defined time itself. But here's where Zorath became treacherous. When 2 wanderers aligned favorably, but a third sat in the House of Ash, the sky contradicted itself. A contradicted sky meant a divided prophecy. Vaeltharion doctrine ranked the sky's voices by brightness and motion. The Pale Wanderer, their name for the outermost visible planet, held the highest authority. Its position alone could override every other alignment in the chart. Not every star reading concerned kings. Farmers consulted the tower's lower tiers before sowing grain. Merchants paid junior priests to read the House of Copper for trade winds. Even marriages required a conjunction approval before vows could be spoken. And this is the counterintuitive core of Zorath. The stars didn't speak clearly. They required interpretation. Interpretation required priests, which means the Tower of Zorilith wasn't just an observatory. It was the most powerful political institution in Vaeltharion. The Zorath priests entered training at age 7. They were called the Vaeltharion, the bound to light. For 20 years, they studied nothing but the sky, the instruments, and the 3,000 lines of the Codex Zorilith, the Empire's foundational prophecy text. The Codex Zorilith wasn't a book of predictions. It was a book of conditions. If the Pale Wanderer enters the House of Iron while the red star is ascending, then this follows. It read like a legal contract signed between the sky and the earth. But one configuration had no conditional clause. The omen of unmaking, all 6 wanderers aligned within a single house, carried only one reading in the Codex. The age ends. No escape clause, no alternate interpretation. The age simply ends. Here's where it gets harder. The omen of unmaking had been calculated forward, predicted for the year the Vaeltharion called the 309th conjunction. The Empire's entire military strategy for 2 generations was built around surviving it. The Vault of Continuance was carved into the Zorilith bedrock over 2 centuries before the predicted alignment. It held the Codex, seed archives, and the instruments needed to re-establish the Zorath system after the Age's collapse, a civilization backing up its own soul. The question from the opening, decoration or verdict? For the Vaeltharion, it was never in doubt. The stars had already decided. The only question was whether the living were paying close enough attention to read the sentence correctly. Comets were the wild card the Codex feared most. Called the Vel-Keth, the unbound lights, they appeared without conjunction schedule, which meant the Codex had no conditional clause for them. A comet forced the priests to improvise. Improvisation was terrifying. In the 91st conjunction, a comet appeared during the harvest alignment. Senior priests declared it a sign of abundance. The junior Vaeltharion read it as a war omen. The empire split its response. Half the granaries were sealed, half were opened. The resulting famine killed thousands. This mechanism has a name: self-fulfilling prophecy embedded in governance. In 1348, when the Black Death reached Paris, the medical faculty of the University of Paris officially attributed it to a conjunction of Saturn, Jupiter, and Mars on March 20th, 1345. Physicians who accepted that reading delayed quarantine measures. The interpretation of the sky shaped the death toll. A prophecy system doesn't merely respond to events, it shapes them. The response was the Vaeltharion Annex, a supplementary codex compiled over 40 years following the famine. It cataloged every recorded comet appearance and assigned retroactive readings, trying to build a pattern from what had been, by definition, unpatterned. The tension between fate and agency inside celestial divination isn't invented. It's one of the oldest documented philosophical disputes in history. Babylonian scribes in the 7th century BCE explicitly debated whether omen rituals called namburbi could neutralize a bad celestial reading. Greek Stoics argued the same question a century later. Both traditions landed on the same uneasy answer: the stars command, but the wise can negotiate. Here's the structural claim worth holding. When the Babylonian state distributed identical omen reports to provincial governors across the Neo-Assyrian Empire, scholars have documented that administrative response times to royal decrees improved. Every official was operating from the same celestial calendar, the same threat classifications, the same decision triggers. Shared cosmology wasn't poetry. It was a synchronization protocol for a pre-telegraph empire. The clearest surviving record of this system is the Babylonian Enuma, Anu, and Lil, compiled primarily between 1800 and 1200 BCE, well after Sargon of Akkad's era, which ended around 2279 BCE. The Enuma, Anu, and Lil contains over 7,000 celestial omens, governing everything from royal succession to crop yields. It wasn't a religious text in the devotional sense. It was a policy manual written in the language of the sky. What the Babylonian model reveals is this: prophecy isn't primarily about prediction. It's about decision architecture. The Enuma, Anu, Enlil didn't tell Assyrian kings what would happen. It told them which questions were worth asking, which risks required ritual response, and most critically, which institution held the authority to decide. The scribal class that controlled the text controlled the state. The clearest historical example of weaponized celestial authority is the conflict between the Babylonian king Nabonidus and the priests of Marduk in the 6th century BCE. Nabonidus neglected the New Year festival, a ritual requiring the king to grasp the hand of Marduk's statue under specific celestial conditions. The priesthood declared his reign cosmically illegitimate. When Cyrus the Great invaded in 539 BCE, the priests opened the gates. Prophecy had transferred power without a battle. Here's the counterintuitive twist. When Cyrus the Great took Babylon in 539 BCE, he didn't destroy the Temple of Marduk. He performed the New Year ritual himself, grasping the hand of the statue, and issued the Cyrus cylinder, declaring that Marduk had chosen him as the rightful king. The Persian conqueror adopted the Babylonian celestial legitimacy system wholesale. The sky's authority outlasted the dynasty it had just helped destroy. The Oracle of Delphi ran on the same principle 3 centuries later. No Greek general sacked it, because every faction needed it intact to claim divine sanction. As the 309th conjunction approached, the predicted omen of unmaking, Vaeltharion didn't collapse in panic. It prepared methodically. The vault was stocked. The codex was copied 7 times. The instruments were calibrated to their highest precision. The empire faced its predicted end with extraordinary discipline. What happened at the 309th conjunction is the lore's deepest silence. The vault was found sealed from the inside. The tower's upper tiers were dark. The city was empty, not burned, not sacked, simply vacated, as if everyone had somewhere else to be. The Maya Dresden Codex, produced around 1200 CE, contains Venus tables accurate to within 2 minutes of arc, more precise than European astronomy of the same period. But the tables weren't scientific records. They were war scheduling tools. Maya rulers launched military campaigns specifically when Venus rose as a morning star because the Codex classified that position as cosmically favorable for conquest. Cosmology didn't reflect values, it operationalized them. Recall Nabonidus. The conflict that ended his reign wasn't about the stars, it was about who got to read them. The Babylonian priesthood held interpretive monopoly over the Enuma Anu Enlil, and that monopoly was the actual instrument of political power. That's the enduring lesson of every Zorilith, real or imagined. The authority of any prophecy system lives entirely in its interpreters, not in the accuracy of its predictions. Here's the sharpest example of celestial knowledge as raw power. In February 1504, Christopher Columbus was stranded in Jamaica, his crew starving, the local Arawak people refusing to supply food. Columbus consulted his almanac, which predicted a total lunar eclipse on February 29th. He warned the Arawak that his god would darken the moon as punishment. The eclipse arrived on schedule. The Arawak resumed supplying food immediately. Columbus had no army. He had an almanac and the interpretive authority it gave him. The next time you encounter a system that claims authority from something beyond human dispute, a natural law, a historical inevitability, an algorithmic score, ask the Babylonian question: who compiled the text and who controls the interpretation? The Enuma Anu Enlil had 7,000 omens. Every one was written by a scribe with a political address. The sky doesn't issue commands. People do, and they've always needed the sky to make those commands feel permanent.